he was able to rise to great heights and achieved a number of noteworthy achievements, academic, professional, intellectual, personal achievements. We mentioned the farmhouse. I think most of you know about our family property a few miles from here. That farmhouse and the surrounding land have been in our family for over 100 years. The farmhouse is a separate story unto itself, a lot of history there, but for the purposes of this story, that's where my dad was born. My dad was born in that farmhouse. He was not born in a hospital. He was born in a hand-built, wood-frame, primitive farmhouse in North Georgia countryside in 1934 with no running water or electricity. Now, to put it mildly, life on the farm was tough. Life was a very hard scrabble, just hand-to-mouth sort of existence. And they didn't have million-dollar John Deere machines working the land. They worked the land with their backs and with their hands. We still call it the farmhouse, but it's not really a farm anymore. But back in those days, it was a fully functioning farm, crops and livestock and all of the hard work that it takes to run a farm, especially back in those days. And as was the custom back then, my dad was pretty much just put to work on the farmhouse from a young age. I don't know what age exactly. I would say maybe 8 or 9 or 10, thereabouts. So, Maddie, that means that when Grandpa was around your age, he was put to work on the farm. Hard work, manual labor. So, I guess every generation likes to do this, but I like to give my kids a little bit of a hard time about how easy they have it and how much harder it was when I was growing up. But the truth be told, compared to my dad, I grew up in the absolute lap of luxury. When we joke about the old timers who like to say that they walked to school 5 miles in the snow, uphill both ways, he really could make that claim with a straight face. He really lived that sort of a life growing up. This is kind of conjecture on my part, but I'm guessing that his typical day was something like waking up before dawn, doing several hours of hard manual labor, and then walking several miles to school, studying and learning, walking back home, and doing more farm work until whenever the sun just happened to set at that time of year. That was real life for him. So as you can imagine, growing up like that had a big effect on him for the rest of his life. His work ethic, his general attitude towards things, and the way that he raised me and my sister. Anyways, I think you get the picture. He grew up tough. But to keep the story moving along, in addition to being tough, he was smart. And I mean book smart. And like you said, doing just the word smart doesn't quite do it justice. He was more than just smart. He was possessed of a superior intellect from a young age. He was a voracious reader. And he had an insatiable intellectual curiosity, and he was by all accounts an exemplary student at school. And it was the combination of those two things, I think, that laid the ground, his work ethic and his intellect, that laid the groundwork for what he would eventually go on to achieve. So, from the small town of Cahutta, he gets accepted into Georgia Tech University. He went there and decided to major in chemical engineering, often regarded as one of the most difficult and technically demanding fields of engineering. He excelled at university. He earned a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree with a specialty in some sort of something that I won't even try to explain, but had something to do with solid state versus liquid state rocket propellant and the things that happen to the fluid dynamics of those propellants when they are placed under high external pressure loads, et cetera, et cetera. Something to that effect. Basically, the point is, at this point here in his career, he was pretty much a rocket scientist. And I mean that literally, not facetiously. He was a rocket scientist. And not in the sense of like sometimes when we're talking about something that we're sort of overcomplicating things and we say, hey, this is not rocket science, okay? What he did was actual rocket science. That's what his specialty was really about. It was about developing the optimal fuel propellant for the rockets. Anyways, he was smart, super smart. He was a literal rocket scientist, and that was how he got hired on after Georgia Tech. Now, in the interest of time, I'll kind of fast forward through his professional career just a bit, but briefly. He spent his entire professional career with one single company, a chemical production company called Roman Haas, who was later bought out by DuPont. He started off in Huntsville, Alabama, where he was doing his rocket science sort of stuff. That's also where he met and married my mom. And then from there, he moved to the Houston, Texas area, where he was involved in running one of their major production plants in some sort of capacity, and that's also where both me and my sister were born. And from there, he took a job in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where he moved into more executive managerial type of work, and by the time he finished his career there, he had basically reached the upper echelons of the company. I'm not sure exactly what, but something in the executive C-suite, something way high up. So, you know, here in the last 10 years or so, I made a concerted effort to sort of learn more about my dad and learn more about the stuff that I hadn't fully appreciated or understood when I was younger. And to that end, whenever we did have time together, I would ask him some pointed questions about parts of his life that I hadn't really understood growing up. And there was one time a few years ago when Mom and Dad were visiting us in Virginia, and he was telling me more about his time in Houston in particular when he was running the production plant. And he was telling me how challenging it was and what it really took to keep a large production plant like that operating on schedule day in and day out. And something occurred to me, and I asked him, "Hey Dad, did your parents really understand what you did for a living? Or did they just have like a general sense that you had a good job?" And with no hesitation, he was like, "Oh, no. They just knew I had a good job." And that struck me, and the more I thought about that, it really drove home to me just how far he came in life. His own parents, as good and wholesome of people as they were, probably never really fully understood or appreciated what he had really achieved. So, by the time he had retired, he had gone from a poor rural farm boy, barefooted, born in a house with no running water or electricity, and from there went on to become a chemical engineer with an advanced degree, a rocket scientist, and he had ascended into the highest levels of the corporate ladder. That's not too shabby for a farm boy. But careers must end at some point, and when his did, he decided to come back here to this part of the country and return to his roots. And I think at that point, his life really sort of came full circle in a way. My dad was in his late 50s when he retired, and he passed away at the age of 90. So he lived for a little over 30 years as a retiree. And during that time, he did not just rest on his laurels. He always kept his mind sharp. He continued to read and learn and write and travel. He and my mom did all of the traveling in retirement that they'd not been able to do during his career. And Mom helped me out here because you know better than me, but you and Dad visited Europe, South America, various parts of Asia, the Pacific Islands, somewhere in there, Alaska, probably more than that. And like I said, he also wrote. He was a published author. He wrote at least 3 different books. Again, help me out if I'm not mistaken, but he wrote his own autobiography. He wrote a separate book about the farmhouse and its history, and he wrote a 3rd book about his personal faith journey. So, anyways, one more thing and I'll be done. You know, I don't know if a son is or should be expected to measure up to his father, but if he is, then when it comes to academic and professional achievement, I think he set that bar out of reach for me, and I have no problem saying so. I do not measure up to that bar. But, of course, you know, a life is not just about a career. It's about your human connections and your personal legacy. And if you knew my dad, then you know, I don't think I'll shock anyone by saying you probably wouldn't call him the life of the party type. Not super loud, extroverted, gregarious. He was a serious man, and he was a thoughtful man. But he was first and foremost a man of great personal faith and a great family man, both with his immediate family, but also his extended family. So that is what I look at as the other bar that he set for me. That's the one that I strive to emulate. You know, in the military, I see a lot of people whose family life suffers for the sake of their career, and sometimes that's what it takes to advance a career. To my dad's credit, as much as he achieved, he never let that happen. His family was always his top priority. So the question is not whether he was a good engineer, the question is whether he was a good father, and I'm happy to report that he was. He was a great father to me and Sandy, a good son to his own parents, a good husband to my mom, a good grandpa to my girls, and Rebecca and Joshua, and I have more than one cousin who each claim him as their favorite uncle. So that is what a proper life is really about. That's the bar that he set for me to measure up to. And so until then, we love you, Dad. We miss you. And thanks again to all of you for making it out today.
Good morning. This is really weird because it's like my first funeral ever, like attending. I don't really know how it works, but growing up.
That's fine, you're doing great.
Growing up, I thought my grandpa was like invincible, just like an untouchable like force that like could not be like messed with, tampered with, like I don't know, just I could not see anything happening to him. Like I thought he was just gonna be there forever because he played such a big role in my life. Like I remember so many visits, just he was always there. Just any gathering, he was always there. I would go up and talk to him, and he would call me a lot. And I remember just saying like, "Oh, hey, Grandpa, did I tell you that this and this and this?" So, but I feel like I took it for granted. Honestly, with all that he accomplished in life, it's no wonder that like I thought that he was like invincible, and that like the whole family almost like looked up to him. He wrote books, he preached, he taught, he traveled, he pursued a career, like he said. He raised a family, and he was just there for like almost anyone. Something I remember him for was his traveling experiences. I remember almost every time we went to a new place or a new country, my parents would be, "Oh, did you know Grandpa came here one time?" And I'd be like, "What?" But no one's ever been here before. I just always thought that was amazing. I wondered how like someone could travel around the world like so fast and just go to different continents when I'm young and I haven't even been to all 50 states yet. When I was young, I've always loved writing. I've always loved writing, just not like biographies like he did. I usually just write fiction. I still do to this day. But I remember my parents always gonna like say, "Oh, you have so much in common with your grandma, with your grandpa. He writes stuff too." And I always thought that was really cool. When I was about 10 or 11, he gave me the book about his life, both actually. I have copies at home. And since I was young, I didn't really like, I don't know, at the time it just looked like a big, boring book of words, so I put it aside. I was like, at first my first reaction was, ew, this is some big book, like this feels like homework. So it wasn't until I was about like 12 maybe that I actually picked it up and started reading, like took the time. I was blown away because he never really told me about his life when I was very young, because I was extremely young. I couldn't grasp like the idea. I could barely remember when his birthday was because his was close to mine, so I was too concerned about my own. So I actually started reading it, and it amazed me. I never heard of such like in fiction or just celebrities. I've heard of like them going through similar things. So at the time, I thought of my grandpa as a superhero or a celebrity, or I don't know, like I know it's very childish, but a princess almost, like an old, like a tragic story. But as I grew older, some of the things that he did started inspiring me. When he went to Georgia Tech, it's inspired me to start looking into Georgia Tech for college. It's one of my top 5 choices now for applying. He's inspired me to continue writing, because even to this day, my parents will always say, oh, he writes just like you. You guys have so much in common. And I want to keep that up, just that one thing we have in common. But there were just so many things I wished I had, appreciated while he was here. I wish I had, even though I was very, very little and I couldn't do anything, I couldn't help it, I wish I had actually asked him some stuff. I wish I had, sat down and asked him this and this and this. But I could have, even in his final moments, but something was holding me back. I think it was more like the fear to get attached, since I knew he was going to be gone soon. But now that he's really gone, I really wish I did talk to him. Now, even though I can't ask him in person, I know that since I have these books, I can understand some of the things. I can have some answers. Because of this, I know that I will never take another family member for granted ever again. Just think, oh, they're not going to be gone for a long time, because who knows, they could be gone tomorrow. However, I even though I wasn't able to be with him in his final moments, I'm really happy his real, close family was able to be with him. The family who was with him since, day one. I know that he can finally go with all the generations of the family that he was always talking about and that he missed for so long. And I'm sure they're congratulating him right now, patting him on the back, celebrating his congratulations, just raising a toast. I do know, though, that this isn't goodbye. It's never goodbye. I know that someday I'll be able to join him, and maybe, just maybe, I'll be able to get my answers. Maybe then I can sit down, tell him about my life, ask these, since I'll be much more wiser and actually know what to say and how to put into words. Thank you.
This is a reading from Psalm 90. Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the whole world. From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn people back to dust, saying, return to dust, you mortals. 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or a watch in the night. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And Dad's favorite verses, 1 Peter 1:24-25. All people are like grass, and the glory is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word of the Lord endures forever.
Hi, I'm Joey Phipps. My father is Kelly Phipps. My mother's Julie Phipps. They're not here today. I think John was a really big role model to my dad, and my parents are very upset they're not here today. They asked me to read this letter that my dad wrote. We're so sorry we couldn't be here today. With John being a world traveler that he was, 50 plus foreign countries boggles the mind. We are hoping he would understand. John was a tremendously positive influence in our life in many, many ways. We wanted to express a few of those ways John's influence was important to us and helped shape our lives. We learned so much from John over my life that it's hard to summarize in a short space. Ken and Roger, aka Little Butch, and I spent a lot of time at the farm in Cohutta, when we were young kids. A few weeks every summer, many holidays, maybe a camp out weekend when Bud and Marcella hosted. We saw John at most of those visits to Cohutta. I'm sorry, I think I won the award for smallest print. I'm having trouble here. Back then, it's fair to say, I wasn't that fond of John. He had little patience for us kids. Strangely, he often seemed to think we were too loud and rambunctious. John felt he had to tell us to quiet down a lot. He'd turn off the TV or turn down the radio most of the time without asking us or anyone else. As the years rolled by, John and Kathy had Sandy and John Garvin. He became a little more patient with us, and he developed a heck of a sense of humor over those many years. If that sense of humor was present in my younger years, I was totally unaware. Me, Ken, and Roger probably became a little more tolerant as well. Over the last 25 to 30 years, John and Kathy became some of our very dearest and closest friends and relatives. About 35 years ago, John gave me some advice. In this particular instance, it was unsolicited advice. We were at the farmhouse with Mamaw, Julie, myself, and my mom. Mamaw and the others were all out front, on and around the front porch. I'm sure many of you can picture the scene. Someone asked me how long Julie and I had been dating. I think at the time the answer was a short 4.5 years. John's question to me, "What are you waiting on?" That turned out to be pretty good advice. This is a short list, and by no means a complete list, of things I learned from Uncle John. John was a dedicated servant of the Lord. He taught us the importance of worship and prayer. John showed through action and words the importance of family and documenting family history. John's autobiography was unbelievably educational for us. Julie and I learned so much about our family roots and the farm life in John's early years. John taught us the importance of generosity to those less fortunate, in doing so without judgment. He worked with his church, the Lions Club, and many other organizations. John helped people and did so without expecting any recognition. He was very humble in that way. John led by example on how to handle finances and the importance of fiscal responsibility. He must have been really good at this one. Heck, he's been retired since I was 15 years old. John taught us the importance of forgiveness and unconditional love. John taught us the importance of taking care of your mom and dad and your elders. He put great time, effort, and resources into doing so. John loved sports, especially loved golf. He taught the enjoyment of sport and the importance of practicing that craft. We're going to miss John tremendously, and it will be a different world for us without him here. For us, that void will be greatest and will be particularly acute in two specific occasions every year, the Ware Campout and Thanksgiving. John loved both of those events and went to great lengths to make sure he and Kathy were almost always at both. Thank you, John, and we love you. Thank you. I'd like to have Jeff Mefford come up here and speak next.
Didn't fall down. Thank you, Joey. It might be helpful to know where Kelly and Julie are. They're in Istanbul, is that not right? Yeah, so it's not like they're down the road and couldn't make it. I'm Jeff Mefford. I'm a first cousin, and I see several first cousins out here, Virginia and my sister. Glenn, am I missing somebody, please? Anybody else? So we're all first cousins, and really enjoyed much of the life of being around John. John Garvin talked about his academics, and I think our research went down the same path, didn't it, a little bit. Excuse me if I repeat it just a little bit, but he did graduate first in his class of chemies at Georgia Tech. Just that sentence alone, think about that. First of all, he graduated as an engineer. That's not easy. He was a chemie, which is much more difficult. He was first in his class against all those other chemie, and that shows a little bit about his competitiveness that comes out a little bit. Quiet though, but competitive. And he graduated from Georgia Tech. Now, I just as an aside, There are those people that think that there's another university in this state that's a pretty important state, a pretty important university. But I think, at least today, they would all agree that Georgia Tech has higher academic qualifications. This is John's sophomore year classes that he took. 3/4 of calculus, 3/4 of engineering physics, 3/4 of German, and 2/4 of quantitative analysis. Is there anybody that's taken courses that difficult? I mean, it's not Management 101 or Glenn, I think you mentioned you took golf in, but you passed, right? As John Garvin said, he received a Master's of Science degree in Chemie. This is his thesis. I think you touched on it, for the sake of repeating it. Just when I read this, it's like I can understand the words individually, but I don't know how they go together. The effects of tabulators on flow patterns and pressure losses in two-phase fluid flow. Anybody can describe what that means? And as you said, he started off as a rocket science and solid rocket propellants. Actually, the last job that he had was in charge of product integrity department, assuring consistent product quality across all production at Roman Haas. That is a huge job, a hugely responsible job. And what you obviously see is not only did we know he was intelligent, but everybody he worked with knew he was intelligent and wise as well. But he wasn't just a chemie. He was valedictorian of his high school. Okay, there wasn't 100 people in the high school, but he was still number one. That counts. He won spelling bees. I know I've worked with a lot of engineers in my life, and there's a lot of them that couldn't spell at all. You gave them C and T, and they couldn't spell cat, right? He taught adult Bible classes, as we've heard. He also taught engineering and family financial management and math in college. I didn't know that. That's pretty impressive. He wrote multiple books, and he conducted a number of services in the church. He did have a thirst for knowledge and a love of books. One of the stories that I heard about John and loved was that John had accumulated so many books in his office that it became a bit of, a bit unwieldy. It was so bad that I believe Kathy refused to go in there and clean it because there were too many books. But that described his thirst for knowledge. And it went throughout his life. We heard golf. He took up golf at age 33. And he would describe himself as an average golfer. He was a pretty good golfer, shot in the 80s and occasionally got in the 70s. So that's a pretty good golfer. I mean, that's very good. I had the occasion with him one time to have him playing with him, and he got an eagle on a hole. If you don't know, an eagle is 2 strokes better than par, better than a birdie. And if you don't know that, most people have only had 1 or 2 or maybe a handful of eagles in their life. I was there with John when he had one. We were at Bent Creek near the campground, and a par 5 on his 3rd shot goes into the hole, about 120 yards out. It was wonderful to celebrate it with him, and we enjoyed it. When we got back to the campground, the congratulations turned into kidding because we started guessing what club he had used. If you're Tiger Woods from 120, you're probably using a sand wedge, and you're backing it up. If you're really, really old and you can't hit the ball very far, you're hitting a 3-wood, okay? And we would kid which one it was, which one he did hit, which one he didn't hit. Well, today, and it's an important day to do it, I will tell you which club he hit. Somewhere between a 3-wood and a sand wedge is what he hit. Finally, I love John's sense of humor. I will tell you that the 18 years difference that we had grew much shorter as he grew older. And he was wonderful to talk with. We hear about his wisdom, so wise and so intelligent. I love to talk with him about something that he didn't know about, and the next time I talked to him about it, he knew more than I did. I mean, and that's no exaggeration. I think we all could probably say that. One Thanksgiving, and we've referenced the Thanksgivings, I can't tell you how important those were in his life and all of our lives. One Thanksgiving, we're at the golf house, and I'm sitting with him in a room, and their dog, Red, Cocker Spaniel, was walking around, and something was wrong with it. It was running into things. And I said, John, what's wrong with the dog? He said, well, the dog has lost its sight. It's gone blind. I said, really? And watching it walk around, it did a pretty good job. It bumped into a few things. I think things had been moved around for Thanksgiving and made it difficult on the dog. But I was pretty impressed. And then I saw something and I thought, I've got John on this one. I know I have him on this one. There's a doghouse, and above the door on the doghouse, it says Red. I said, John, why in the world do you need to write that name above the door if the dog's blind? It can't read it. His response, it's for the other dogs. Quick-witted and humorous. I thought that was a pretty good line. We'll all miss John. I'm proud to be his cousin, honored to be his friend. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing all of those wonderful thoughts about John and our memories today. Please stand. We are going to sing hymn number 10 because John wanted this song at his funeral. This is going to be hymn number 10, How Great Thou Art, and this is going to be verses 1 and 4. Verses 1 and 4, hymn number 10. My God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the roaring thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy should fill my heart. Then I shall bow in humble acclamation and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Roger, please lead us in closing prayer.
truly inspiring hearing everyone's remembrance. I appreciate that very much. I'm sure Kathy does. Let me read to you a scripture that has touched the lives of people for eternity. The 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
That concludes today's service. Again, the family would like to thank you all for joining us, and we would like to thank the family for allowing us to serve y'all. You are dismissed.
Appreciate it. Thank you for playing for us today. Really good. All worked out. All worked out. As planned.